Okay, wonderful. Well, I would like to thank you for coming in for this June Nature Program series. Before I introduce tonight's speakers, I just wanted to take a moment to first thank our Nature Program series sponsors, Hancock Lumber, Ragged Mountain Equipment, and now White Mountain Oil and Propane. So we appreciate their support of our programming. Also, some upcoming nature programs that we have for the beginning of summer. Coming up later this month, currently scheduled on Tuesday, June 29th, we have our annual Mountain Laurel Walk, but we may have to bump that up because it's all about when the Mountain Laurel is in bloom, but a walk up at our nature at the Rockwell Sanctuary up in Albany to explore that nice large stand of mountain laurel. Starting on July 1st, we have our weekly walks up at the field station in Jackson every Thursday morning in July and August at 10 a.m. So a great way to get out and explore some lesser trodden trails in the Mount Washington Valley. And also an exciting field program we have scheduled for the middle of July. We have a garden pollinator field program. We have Deb Marnich from Natural Resources Conservation Services and a woman from the Xerces Society of Invertebrates that we'll be exploring the garden and all of the pollinators that help make it possible. So lots of fun field programs coming up this summer. And this evening, we are very excited to have Andrea back with us. Andrea Lamoureux, who is the president of New Hampshire Lakes, will be talking to us about sort of healthy lakes and when healthy recreating in times of lots of use. So we're happy to have you back, Andrea, and I'm going to hand things over to you.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, I'm happy to be here, and thank you to those of you who are tuning in this evening and others of you who will tune in later. And so you can see that okay? All right. Well, I will pause periodically in case you guys have questions, but I'm super excited. I love talking about lakes. And so I've presented to your group before in the past, and I'm just excited to come back. So let's just get right into it. How many lakes and ponds are there in New Hampshire? So think about your guess. And there are approximately 1,000 lakes and ponds in New Hampshire. And this is an aerial view of the lakes region. But I say there is something for everyone when it comes to our lakes and ponds. And lakes really are an integral part of our relatively high quality of life here in New Hampshire, our economy, and our natural heritage. We have a long history of lakes being really important in our communities. And this is a picture here of around the turn of the 19th century, I believe, here with the Grand Inns and the beautiful wooden boats and the steam. You can see a steamboat there. So people have been coming to our lakes for hundreds of years to get out of the big cities, to get out into nature, to have fun with their friends and their families and relax. And we've seen that happening, especially these past 2 years, last year and this year with the pandemic, definitely noticing people moving into New Hampshire, coming to New Hampshire and getting out on our lakes. So again, there's really something for everyone when it comes to our lakes and ponds in summer. So just go through a couple pictures here to make us feel like we're out there, whether you enjoy motorboating, sailing, paddling, canoeing. These are my friends a couple years ago on Newfound Lake in New Hampshire. Kayaking, water sports, water skiing, tubing. This is me and my daughter several years ago on Lake Sunapee, and just so much fun being out there. Wakeboarding, wake surfing, with my daughter fishing a number of years ago. There's just so many things that we can do on our lakes. It truly is something for everyone. You know, this is Conway Lake, actually a number of years ago, the town swimming area there. And just, I love this picture just to see all the different, you know, activity. We've got the kids jumping up the docks, the tubes, the kid down in the corner on his, you know, floating on a paddleboard. Way out in the distance, you see some kayaking and canoeing and a couple pontoon boats. Just, you know, what a wonderful place to be. Fun and good for us to get out there. Lakes are even for dogs, right? They're not just for people. These are two dogs that are just having a grand old time with some people in the background there. So truly, our 1,000 lakes and ponds in New Hampshire provide something for everyone. And New Hampshire really is home to some of the cleanest and healthiest lakes in the country. And sort of a personal story, and I'm not sure if Nora has heard this story, but I grew up in New Hampshire on Lake Sunapee. And Lake Sunapee is like this, pretty crystal clear. You can see your feet. But then I went to college, and I went to college in North Carolina. And if anyone here is from North Carolina, I don't mean to offend you. I apologize. But when I went to North Carolina, I went to college there, and freshman year, I ran track, and we had a particularly tough workout, and it was pretty hot. And me and my friends, we said, "Hey, let's go jump into the lake." So we went, you know, jumping into the lake. And as soon as I jumped into the lake, I was like, something's not right here. You know, I look around, I can't see my feet. I can't see my arms. I'm like, what? You know, what is going on? And then to add injury to insult, little things that I could not see in this murky water started biting me. I was like, that's it. I am out. So I go running out of the lake, and I'm standing there on the beach, just looking out at this like milky coffee colored water body with these patches of algae and like crazy plants growing over here. And I was like, why are these lakes in North Carolina like this? How did they get like this? And, you know, that was my sort of aha moment where I said, well, I want to study ecology. I want to study lakes. And eventually I want to move back to New Hampshire and do what I can so the lakes that I know and I've grown up on, you know, don't become like that. So I am going on about 23 years working for lakes and ponds, keeping them clean and healthy in New Hampshire. So I want to still be able to see my feet when I go in the lake. I want my kiddo to be able to see her feet and those that come after her. So clean and healthy lakes they're good for us. And again, you know, think about a time where you went out to the lake and went for a swim. You know, it's just probably a very relaxing, refreshing thing. Really being near the water, in the water, on the water, under the water, it truly can make you happier, healthier, and also it's just more focused, more connected, and better at what you do. And, you know, I think maybe many of us instinctively know this, but there's actually an emerging science, the science of Blue Mind, that really does, you know, studies body responses, and really does find that being, again, just near the water, under the water, around the water, on the water, really does lower your stress levels, lowers the production of harmful energy in your body, and helps you to be more relaxed. Being near and in and on and under the water can also be really good for people who are wounded or, you know, having a major medical issue. There's studies that show that, you know, folks with, you know, stress related syndromes, part of being in the water, around the water, is part of their therapy. So this is a book here on the right called Blue Mind by Wallace J. Nichols, and it's a really fascinating read. And if you're still picking out your summer reading list, I would recommend adding Blue Mind to it. You can get it right off of Amazon and independent booksellers as well. And it's just a really fascinating look at why being, again, near, in, on, or under the water is just so actually physiologically good for us. And I found this infographic online from the boating industry, and I know it's probably a little hard to read here, but this infographic is basically, explaining all the different ways that boating helps you, is good for you. And you may be able to see this, basically one of the central things of Blue Mind is when we're stressed, we're anxious, and that's when we have what's called red mind. We have, stress, we have hormones that are stress related. But then once we get near the water, it's sort of an antidote to that. We get the blue mind, the calm, peacefulness, unity, and happiness. Our bodies are made of water, large percentage, and we're drawn to water. So again, I am not the scientist, the expert in this discipline of science, but just to let you know that there is this emerging discipline, which is coming up with some pretty convincing data about why water is so good for us, being near, in, on, under it, around it. So again, I encourage you to, if you're interested, to learn more about Blue Mind, get the Blue Mind book. It's fascinating. And it's one of the reasons that, we really should try to spend some time at the lake. And again, as I said before, New Hampshire is home to some of the cleanest and healthiest lakes in the country. This is Newfound Lake. But the health and enjoyment of our lakes is threatened. And I'm sure that you are somewhat familiar with this. Invasive species, plants like milfoil, hitchhiking their way into our region, into our lakes, and causing all sorts of problems. We'll learn a little bit more about that. Polluted runoff water. So when it rains, water coming off the landscape and washing into our lakes and bringing in unwanted things. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And our lakes, our health and enjoyment of our lakes is threatened by changing weather patterns. We are actually still in a period of drought, and a lot of our lakes, water levels are lower than normal. And we are seeing, or we are hearing that with climate change, we're going to be continuing to get about the same amount of rain every year, maybe a little bit more, but we're going to be getting that rain in fewer storms. So basically what that means is we're going to have fewer but bigger storms. And when we have bigger storms, that means we have more water running off the landscape, polluted runoff water, picking up pollution on the way into our lakes. So that impacts the health of our lakes and consequently our enjoyment of our lakes. So what is the problem with invasive species? And if you guys have any questions, certainly feel free to type them into the chat box or save them all up for the end. I'll allow for some Q&A time. But what is the problem with invasive species? And this is a person trying to swim through milfoil, some actually kind of yucky algae encrusted milfoil. Milfoil is an invasive plant, and that doesn't look too relaxing to me. So what is the problem with invasive species? They are plants and animals. First of all, what are they? They're plants and animals that aren't supposed to be here. They came from some other part of the world. Most of our invasive plants and animals in our lakes came from Europe and Asia. And hitchhiked their way over here, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But an aquatic invasive species is a species that causes harm, environmental or economic harm, and they outcompete the plants and animals that are supposed to be here for food and for space. Essentially, they're aliens. They came from afar, and they're starting to cause some trouble. So invasive species infestations make recreation dangerous and unpleasant in our water bodies. Here on the left, you see a picture of a boat on Squam Lake actually trying to motor through a bed of what's called variable milfoil. And if you've ever tried that, it's really difficult. Variable milfoil can get up to 20 feet long and wraps around your prop, and so basically makes it so you can't really boat through there. Here, right next to that picture, we have a kind of a gruesome picture of a person's foot they've inadvertently stepped on a zebra mussel. I don't know if anyone here has heard of zebra mussels before, but they are small little mussels that have razor sharp edges. And fortunately, and I'm knocking on wood right now, we do not have zebra mussels in New Hampshire, but they've certainly tried to hitchhike their way into our state. And but you don't want to swim in a lake that has zebra mussels. Basically they're so sharp you have to wear shoes when you're in the lake so that you don't get cut. Invasive species infestations in this middle picture here reduce shoreline property values. There have been scientific studies that say if a lake is infested with an invasive species, it lowers all the lakeside property values, and that becomes a community problem pretty quickly. Aquatic invasive species, they truly disrupt the ecologic balance of a water body. We want our water bodies to look like sort of that left-hand side of the picture, very biodiverse, lots of different plants and animals. We don't want it to look at the right side. That would be an example of basically just a monoculture of milfoil, that invasive plant we don't want. So invasive species, we want to try to prevent them from getting here. And if they do get here, we want to try to manage them so they don't get completely out of control. How did they get here? So again, most invasive species came from afar, Europe and Asia. They hitchhiked their way to the US in big cargo going ships, ocean going cargo ships. So these big ships here on the right that are traveling, from a port in Europe or Asia to a port here in the US, they need to fill up with water so that they're stable out in the ocean. So they're not gonna, flip over in the high seas. So what happens is, so maybe they're in a port, over in Europe, and to fill up with water, they just suck up all the water that's there in that harbor. And with that water, they soak up all the little invasive animal, all the different animal larvae and plant fragments and whatnot. And they travel across the ocean, and maybe they come to the port of New York. And then they let out all that ballast water, and they're letting out all the plants and animals that they sucked up, out of that harbor over in Europe. And then over time, those plants and animals, get trapped on other smaller boats, and those smaller boats go from that water body to maybe a lake or a pond, and eventually those animals are able to survive and adapt to our freshwater, our lakes. So that's ultimately how they got here. But then once they're here, some invasive species spread from water body to water body by hitching a ride in the gut or on the feathers of waterfowl. Some invasive species are actually spread by people who maybe go to an aquarium store. They buy a plant or an animal, a snail that's technically shouldn't be sold, but it is being sold. And dump that invasive piece of plant or snail into a pond. There's actually a pond in Manchester, New Hampshire, behind, I think, a Target, which has an infestation of Brazilian Elodea. And that is the only pond in New Hampshire that has Brazilian Elodea. It is invasive, and we're pretty sure it was because someone dumped their aquarium there. But most invasive species are spread from water body to water body inadvertently by everyday boaters who haven't properly cleaned off their boats, drained out their boats, or dried their boats. So, we want to clean up all the plant fragments. We want to drain out all the water because maybe that water, contains invasive animal larvae. We want to, if we have time, we want to dry off all those drops of water. So most invasive species are spread by boaters going from water body to water body. In New Hampshire, there are about 90-ish water bodies that have some sort of invasive species in there. And when we have, 1,000 or so lakes and 12 to 14,000 miles of rivers in New Hampshire, that doesn't sound like a lot. But if it's the lake or pond or river that you love, that's a big deal. There's also some water bodies in New Hampshire that have more than six types of invasive species. So Yikes. You can see here in this map, this is a section of southern New Hampshire. Our invasive infestations are focused in sort of from Lake Winnipesaukee and south. We really don't have anything up north, and knock on wood, and we'll hope to keep it that way. These are just a few pictures of the various invasive species plants in our lakes. The milfoils on the left being the most obnoxious, the variable milfoil. And then actually on this, you can see again, most of these species originated in Europe or Asia. And then in aquatic invasive animals of concern, we have, these are the just pictures. I'm happy to report that presently we have the Asian clam, only the Asian clam and the Chinese mystery snail in our waters. And we hope that we are able to prevent other invasive animals from getting into our water bodies. So aquatic invasive species infestations really can make for a bad day at the lake. This is my kiddo again several years ago. My husband's family has a home on Seneca Lake in New York, the biggest finger lake up there, and they do have zebra mussels. So we have to put on water shoes before we go in the lake. And it was this hot day that she just wasn't having it. You know, what do you mean I have to put shoes on to get in the lake? So kind of gross, but she wasn't able to go in there until she put those shoes on. We didn't want her feet to get cut up. Aquatic invasive species are, once you have it in your water body, they're really difficult and expensive to manage and basically pretty much impossible to get rid of once they're established. So this is a diver here at Squam Lake, diving to hand remove milfoil. So again, the best way to deal with these species is to not get them in the first place. So thanks to education and prevention and management, the rate of invasive species plant spread has slowed over the years, but right now the rate of spread of invasive animals, this is the Asian clam, is on the rise in our lakes, starting in the southern part of the state. So we are needing to really get the message out to boaters about draining out all the water out of their boats, trailers, and gear, because this is how the Asian clam spreads, is by it's in its larval form in drops of water. So that was a whole bunch on invasive species. If anyone has any questions, feel free to, again, to type them in the chat box or save them up for the end. But we will go on to what is the problem with polluted runoff. And this is a kind of a scary picture here in spring, obviously after a big rain event. A bunch of overland water flowed over the landscape and picked up some sediment and then dumped it into this river. And now this river is dumping into a lake. So that is not something we want to see. So a watershed runoff, and I'm sure everyone here knows this, so I won't spend too much time on it, but we look at, to keep our lakes healthy, we want to keep the watershed healthy. The watershed is the area where rain and snow melt flows over the land and picks up stuff before it gets into our lake. So we always want to look at the watershed and try to figure out how we can keep it clean and healthy to help keep the lake clean and healthy. But, New Hampshire originally, a couple hundred years ago was really the watersheds. The landscape was, vegetated, lots of trees and shrubs and sponginess to just soak up rain, soak up snowmelt, filter it and clean it. When, as we move on to the landscape, we convert that natural vegetated sponginess into, roofs and roads and driveways, to these hard surfaces that don't soak up water, and instead the water's, the rain and the snow melt runs across the landscape and picks up pollutants on the way into the lake. And this is sort of a dramatic picture here, but each one of us does something on our landscape, and if each one of us is contributing to this pollution problem, it becomes a big deal. Common pollutants in runoff water. I'll just very quickly highlight this. When There can be bacteria from pet waste or failing septic systems. And, bacteria washed into lake can make people that swim in the lake and pets sick and can cause beaches to be closed. We talked about sediment, sediment being washed off the landscape. Sediment often contains, sediment washed into the lakes can clog fish gills, smother the habitat areas, contribute to a mucky lake bottom. No one likes a mucky lake bottom. And carries in nutrients. Nutrients, so that sounds like a good thing, right? Nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus. We want some in our lake, but too many nutrients in a lake can cause all sorts of problems. Algae blooms, toxic algae blooms, toxic cyanobacteria blooms. Fertilizer often contains nutrients. So we want to try to, we'll talk about that a little later, but that's one of the common pollutants in our lakes. And toxic contaminants, there are, on the landscape often, used motor oil or gasoline or pesticides and herbicides, can get washed off the landscape and into our lakes. And that causes some serious problems for aquatic organisms and their ability to really thrive and reproduce and survive. Another thing that's happening in our lakes in New Hampshire is our lakes are meant to be freshwater, but some of them are becoming a little bit more salty over time. And that's usually largely attributed to folks, people like us, using road salt on our driveways and our walkways, and our highway crews using salt. Obviously, we want to keep our roadways and our walkways safe during the winter, but that is using road salt, using salt, not cleaning it up, using too much, is causing problems and getting washed into our waterways. And salt, chlorides, stress out our aquatic plants and animals. And there's even some studies that show that, a saltier lake might be more favorable to invasive species. So that's no good either. And another pollutant that it's kind of a new way of thinking for some is we are causing our lakes to become warmer. So, when we have those rooftops in the walkways and the driveways, those paved areas, they get really hot in the summer. And when maybe we have an afternoon thunderstorm, the rain comes pelting down and washes over that hot surface and actually carries off warm runoff into our lakes and our streams. And that increases the temperature of the water and in turn can accelerate the growth of plants and algae and can really stress some organisms out, especially fish. Fish are really sensitive to temperature. So polluted runoff water, nearly 90% of the water quality problems in New Hampshire are caused by polluted runoff. So that's a pretty sobering number there. But it also is kind of an encouraging number because to me it says, if we put our minds to it, we have a huge opportunity to make some simple changes on the landscape to reduce runoff water and clean it up to make a big difference in water quality. And here in this picture on the left, you see a boat ramp. I happened to visit a boat ramp during a rainstorm and there was just this torrent of runoff water coming off of this, gravelly parking lot, picking up sediment on its way right into the lake. Here on the right is a picture of a lake having a cyanobacteria bloom, so basically a toxic bacteria bloom. And I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing that the lawn next to the lake in the back picture there, and maybe they use fertilizer, maybe that's contributing to that bacteria, cyanobacteria bloom. Unfortunately, you guys may have been hearing about this in the news. I just heard a story on NHPR the other night. Our lakes so far this spring are already experiencing cyanobacteria bloom. So again, that toxic bacteria. So the Department of Environmental Services does test our lakes when they start turning kind of funky colors. And if you go out to a lake and all of a sudden it looks sort of pea soup green or maybe a turquoise teal color, you're going to want to let the Department of Environmental Services know, and they'll have someone come out and test it. And unfortunately, we are seeing an increasing number of cyanobacteria blooms at lakes each summer. So That's probably caused by, you know, the things that we're doing on the landscape to increase the amount of nutrients going into the lake, and also is exacerbated by climate change. So warmer temperatures and more favorable algae and bacteria growing. So if you go to a beach and you see a sign like this, you know, please don't go in the water. Don't let your pet go in the water. It's not good for your health, not good for your pet's health. So the most, you know, it would be pretty crazy for us to think that, you know, that's okay. You know, lakes can just take care of themselves. And, you know, that is not the case. And that's why New Hampshire Lakes, the organization that I work with, exists. We were founded back in 1992, and we're a statewide nonprofit organization. And we say we're the voice for all of New Hampshire's 1,000 lakes. This here is a picture from my family's home on Lake Sunapee in New Hampshire here. But our mission is to keep New Hampshire's lakes clean and healthy now and in the future. And we work with partners, and we help to promote clean water, you know, clean water policies and responsible use. And we, you know, the ultimate goal is to provide people, everyday people who love lakes, you know, with some information and inspiration to take some simple actions to keep them clean and healthy. So we work with local groups, we work with our state representatives and individuals to basically to develop programs and policies, again, for people to take action in their own daily lives. And we advocate at the state level in a state house. We have a policy person on staff. We offer on-the-ground conservation programs. And if you know us, or if someone knows us in the state, it's often through our Lake Coast Courtesy Boat Inspection Program, which is entering its 20th year this summer. And over the past 19 years, we have met with, I think it's about 1.4 million boaters, and helped them understand how to clean, drain, and dry their boats to prevent the spread of invasive species. We've recently launched a new program called our Lake Smart Lake Friendly Living Program, which basically helps property owners find out the opportunities, you know, on their property and in their daily lives, some opportunities for them to make some simple changes to be more lake friendly. And we do outreach. And, you know, in a normal year, we go out to fairs and festivals throughout the state and meet with families and kiddos and do hands-on games while all learning about lake ecology. And we hope to be able to resume those soon. In the interim, I guess for the past 14 months or so, we've really gotten into the webinars. It's been a really great way to connect with a lot of people. So thank you again for inviting us to this evening to speak with you guys. So that's sort of the lead up to, okay, so what can you guys do? And what can you guys, you know, leave this presentation tonight and go encourage your friends and your neighbors and your families to do? You know, just like lakes help keep us healthy, right? We talked about how lakes, you know, help us have a blue mind. Lakes help us to be more relaxed and less stressed. And just like they help us keep healthy, we really need to help keep them healthy too. And I wanted to do something kind of a little bit fun. And, you know, what are the top 10 things that you could, you know, sort of choose from to help keep lakes clean and healthy? And I would love it if you guys, you know, as we're going through this top 10 list, if you could think maybe just committing to one thing that you could do this, you know, going forward in your daily life to help keep our lakes clean and healthy, whether you live on a lake or you live, you know, in the watershed, or you have a favorite lake that you visit periodically. So here are what I think are 10 of the most important ways you can help keep our 1,000 lakes clean and healthy. So help keep shorelines and stream banks vegetated. Plants along the waterway, you know, the edges of the waterway, help to keep our lakes clean and healthy by slowing down runoff water, absorbing it, and cleaning it. You know, this picture here on the left, grass doesn't really count. And we're not against grass, but it would be great if there was then a bunch of, you know, a band of vegetation like shrubs and saplings and, you know, along the edge of the water there to help soak up any excess fertilizer or what's coming off that property. We want our properties to look more like the picture in the middle, with a nice vegetated buffer It also helps protect the home from wind and sun exposure and helps keep the water cooler with the shading. It's better for the wildlife. And I'd mentioned we have that Lake Smart program. You know, the property in the middle here picture would likely be a Lake Smart, lake friendly home. Here on the right is a picture of a project we worked with some high school students on Lake Winnipesaukee a number of years ago, and they're actually planting a vegetated buffer, so that band of vegetation along Lake Waukee there. So one thing you can do is if you are responsible for managing a shoreline or a stream bank, you know, if it's not vegetated, add some native vegetation to it. Avoid applying fertilizer or compost. So most soils in New Hampshire don't even need fertilizer. If you think you need fertilizer, I encourage you to get a soil test first to see if you actually need it. And then if you do feel the need for fertilizer, you probably don't need phosphorus. So you want to look for the fertilizers with here on the right with the middle number of a fertilizer, you want it to be 0. That means no phosphorus. So excess phosphor, you know, fertilizer washed into the lake, I think we talked about this, you know, creates a situation. Not only does it fertilize, you know, the grass on the landscape, it's going to fertilize all the stuff growing in the lake. So we want to, you know, try to minimize that. All right, number 8. Store and dispose of yard waste away from water bodies. So, you know, I have found over my 23+ year career that a lot of people just don't know that it's not a good idea to rake your leaves into the lake or dump your grass clippings in there. You know, certainly, you know, you think out of sight, out of mind, right? But it actually stays around, sticks around, makes the bottom of the lake mucky, brings in a whole heck of a lot of nutrients again. And I think you're probably hearing me say this over and over again. Nutrients in lakes are generally a bad thing. So we want to, you know, make sure that we're not adding any extra organic material. Don't add any more leaves or grass or you know, mulch into our lakes. Another thing you can do is not wash your boats, cars, and pets near the water. And I happen to just love this picture actually of this finely dressed man washing this really cool car. But this is actually a no-no. We don't want, you know, if we wash our boats, cars, and pets, you know, next to the water, we can just expect that cleaning agent is going to go right into the water. And, you know, soaps and shampoos, they add nutrients and other pollutants to the lake. Even, you know, soaps and cleaners that are advertised as, you know, biodegradable or, you know, eco-friendly, generally they may not contain phosphorus, but generally they're going to contain some ingredients that are not good for our lakes. So, you know, wash your boats, wash your pets away from the water. 6, if you have a shorefront property, stabilize the footpaths to the water. And what this means is, you know, make sure that your pathways aren't funneling water right into the lake. And here's a picture on the right. You have a good practice, a lake-friendly living practice, is to have curved, meandering pathways that, you know, are able to shed off runoff water to the side and not, you know, accelerate it and funnel it, you know, and erode soil containing phosphorus into the lake. This middle picture here is an example of a property owner who built a set of infiltration steps. Kind of attractive and actually really safe and stable way for them to access the lake, but it's really neat. Actually, it's the crushed stone there helps to soak up the water and have it go into the ground rather than, you know, again, being funneled and picking up soil and other pollutants on the way into the lake. All right, number 5. Okay, so if you live, whether you live along the lake or in a watershed, if you have a septic system, I encourage you to check it out and see if you see any signs of failure. If, you know, sometimes earlier on in the spring, it's a great time to check to see if your septic system might not be so healthy. And if you're seeing areas of ponded water over where your septic system leach field is, or you're seeing kind of this picture in this middle, kind of a funky, stripes here, basically each those green stripes are where the water comes out of the leach field piping, and it's just so nutrient rich. It's causing, excessive growth. That is a sign that your system is not quite filtering out and breaking down those nutrients properly. And again, a picture here on the right, sinkholes near where the tank is. These are all signs of failure. But even if there aren't signs of failure, either visually or, aromatically, if you don't know what kind of septic system is on your property, or it's been a while since maybe a professional looked at it, this summer would be a great time to reach out to someone who's trained just for them to come have a look. I suspect that malfunctioning septic systems are a major source of nutrient and bacteria pollution to our lakes. So yeah, if you have a septic system, it'd be a really good idea to just get a handle on how healthy it is and what needs to be done to keep it healthy. All right, number 4. Keep shorelines clean by not feeding waterfowl, whether it's your own property or if you're at a park. I encourage you not to feed the waterfowl. And I know they're super cute, and there are members of my family who love to feed the waterfowl, but it's really not a great idea. Waterfowl waste contains a whole heck of a lot of nutrients. Again, nutrients are bad for the water. Nutrients and bacteria that can actually cause swimming areas to be shut down. And also, it's just not healthy for the birds for us to feed them. The food that we feed them, it is not good for them. So kind of like this picture here on the right, a number of places have started putting up signs like this. I know you can't read the fine print there, but it's like, thank you for not feeding us. Bread makes our stomachs hurt. There have definitely been examples in New Hampshire where, feeding of the waterfowl is creating a huge source of nutrient pollution to the lake. So they're fun to look at, but please don't feed them. And we talked about this, but if you are a boater, or if you have guests who come to your home who bring boats, make sure those boats are clean, drained, and dried. And again, this is going to help prevent the spread of fragments of invasive plants. It's going to help prevent the spread of drops of water that have invasive larvae on them. So if you're a boater, this is a really simple action you can take to keep lakes healthy. Number 2, if you do live in a lake community, there's probably a local group that has formed together to really keep tabs on and care for that specific water body. So I would say find out if you're not in a local group that's looking out for a local lake. See if you can join one, and if you need pointed in the right direction, and you can certainly reach out to me and I can let you know what lakes in your community have a lake association looking out for them. Or if you find that a lake in your community doesn't have a local group, on the lookout for it, we can help you pull one together. And number 1, kind of a self-serving tip, but I encourage you, if you aren't supporting New Hampshire Lakes, to consider supporting us. We are a publicly supported nonprofit organization, and we're working to keep all of New Hampshire's lakes clean and healthy. And we rely on folks like yourselves to help us do this work to keep our lakes clean and healthy today and for those who come after us. And we have a great website. We like to think it's all things lakes. Any type of lake question you have, you can probably find the answer here. It's nhlakes.org. And I challenge you, if you go to our website and there's something you don't find the answer to, let me know, and we will, first of all, help you find the answer, and then we'll add it to our site. And if you are in tune with social media, there's a number of ways to follow us on social media. But I really appreciate, and I'm looking forward to any questions you have. I, again, hope that you'll be able to think about maybe one thing that you can do, or you can, encourage your friends and your neighbors to do, because together we can all keep our lakes healthy, and they're going to help keep us healthy too. So thank you for jumping in and doing your part to help keep our lakes clean and healthy. And Nora, I'd be happy to answer any questions at this point if there are any.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Andrea. I know that I have a few questions, and then I will, yes, and then I will open it up and folks can either type their questions into the which I can read out, or they can unmute themselves.
Sure.
But thinking about, you know, as a, you know, listening to this, a few questions that I had were, you know, one of the things that New Hampshire saw, you know, this past year and, you know, is sort of, you know, gearing up to see again is a lot of usage that people are most comfortable recreating outside these days, which is great. But that some places are getting loved to death. And I didn't know if you were seeing or any of sort of any of the lake associations that you work with, or if, you know, New Hampshire lakes in general, if there was a push towards, I don't want to say quotas, but, you know, but if they're looking at sort of management and usage, I think a lot of the state parks in some of them are on lakes, you know, are setting visitor limits. And if that was something, you know, that we're seeing gaining traction.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I'll sort of, first of all, start off by summarizing what we've seen. And yes, we have definitely seen an increase of use at our lakes. And I can say, you know, through our courtesy boat inspection program, our lake host program last year, normally, you know, we inspect around 100,000 boats per summer. Last summer, we inspected just over 130,000 boats. So, you know, program wide, we saw about a 30% increase. And we're only at 100 ramps, you know, and we're not there every day of the boating seasons, but that, you know, let us know that there was a lot more use last year. And for us, you know, it's an opportunity and also a challenge. You know, we came in contact with a lot of new boaters last year. You know, a lot of people went out and bought boats last year. You know, the marinas and dealers, they sold out of boats. So there's this new group of boaters we came in contact with last year that had never thought about invasive species and how they could prevent the spread. You know, so it was an opportunity to educate a whole bunch of people that we hadn't come in contact before. You know, on the flip side of that, then it's like, okay, there's this whole new group that's out there boating who has no idea, or maybe not as familiar with how to prevent the spread of invasive species. Yeah, so we definitely saw, you know, an increase in usage. And I would say there's no management per se that's being planned this summer to, you know, proactively, you know, put quotas or whatever on, you know, the number of boats per se that could be launched on a lake. I think there's already some systems that sort of regulate that themselves. You know, a lot of boat ramps don't have a lot of parking. So in some ways it's self-limiting, you know, people can't launch at, you know, X boat ramp because they, you know, they got there at 8 in the morning and it was already full. So there's some of that, just, you know, limited access in some areas, but managing our lake resources for capacity, you know, and limiting capacity is not something that New Hampshire has really looked at. And it's a hard thing to do. And so I think it's going to just sort of be well, we will continue to expect more usage this summer, but with some just sort of natural regulation based on, you know, access points. Yeah. But great question. Great question.
Yeah, no, thank you. So my other question is whether, and you see it with so many other things, because it's, we all like things neat and tidy, boiled down to like a singular thing. So are there grading system, like, for lake health, to account a number of parameters, but
Sure.
does the state or any other or entities that that are that deal with lakes and water bodies,
Sure.
they have grading systems that would apply to New Hampshire's lakes?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you for asking that one. I would say there is no sort of ranking per se, but the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, the biologists there do have a system in which they characterize lakes into 3 different classes. And the classes are called oligotrophic, mesotrophic, and eutrophic, but basically it means, a young lake, a middle-aged lake, or an old lake. An old lake being, more shallow, more plants, more algae, a young lake being, deeper, rockier, less nutrients, less algae. So yes, the Department of Environmental Services does classify all of our 1,000 lakes into one of those 3 categories. And that information you can get that at the DES website. They have what's called the Lake Mapper. It's a GIS type thing, but user friendly, and you can go in there and start clicking on lakes and find out which of those 3 classifications they're in. So awesome question.
So, and my follow-up, so even if there's not a grading system, and I don't know if this is a fair question, but what is the least healthy lake or water body in New Hampshire? Are there any sort of red flagged ones where
I think it's the one where they left the aquarium fish in.
Exactly. Yeah. I would say what sort of conversely too, and I will try to answer your question. I often hear that people say Newfound Lake is like the cleanest, healthiest lake in the state. And I happen to be in the board of directors for Newfound Lake Association, so I should, agree with them. But I'm not really sure how it got that sort of colloquial rating, but it is pretty darn clean and healthy. It is. It also happens to be our deepest lake in the state. But as for
how deep is it at its deepest point?
Yeah, it's about 170-ish.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but as for the worst lake, and this is I would say that's really hard. And I don't want to pick on anyone, but any lake that is having an active cyanobacteria bloom, I would say would be temporarily one of the worst lakes, because you don't want to deal with that water. You don't want to go in that water when it's having a toxic bloom that could make you sick in a variety of ways, or make your pet sick in a variety of ways. So there, how'd I did a good job skirting?
Yes, I know.
It's very good.
Throw any of these lakes under the bus for us.
But no, I appreciate that question too. Yeah, but if anyone else has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I love talking about lakes, but I know I've also been chatting at you for nearly an hour now. So,
so I have one more question. As often, recreation types that are allowed on lakes vary. And have you seen, or are you aware of any difference in lake health with water bodies that do not allow motorized traffic versus those that do?
That is an awesome question. And I feel like, Nora, you might want to go to grad school and study these things. These are excellent questions. I have to say, I am not aware of any studies or data, at least specific to New Hampshire, that show that. It is, of course, something, as a biologist, I am, curious about, again, as you were alluding to or mentioning earlier, we've had a lot more increased activity on our lakes, no matter what type of activity that is. when we have more wave action on our lakes, bigger waves, we're worried about the shoreline being washed away. We're worried about the lake bottom being disturbed. And, anytime the shoreline gets washed away or the lake bottom gets disturbed, it's adding phosphorus, again, that nutrient we don't want, into the water column, which can make the plants and the algae and the cyanobacteria grow. So, there definitely is a correlation, I would think, between, activity, wave action, and water quality. We don't have any, concrete data at this point, although we are, there is a study going on in Minnesota that we're helping to support that is trying to look at the effect of boating activity, various types of boating activity on water quality, due to, not to get too technical, but different boats and how they're used and the types of waves they're making. And so the data is still being crunched, but we are looking forward to seeing what that study shows. So, and definitely a graduate student is working on it. So great questions. Well, awesome.
Yes. Wonderful. Does anyone have any other questions for Andrea? Any lake questions? We've been out recreating on any of them this season.
Great.
I know I could just keep going. I've got
We're gonna have to talk later.
I know. I got lots more lake questions, Andrea. I got all kinds of them.
Very good.
But thank you so much for taking the time to be with us
Sure.
this evening, for presenting this. We really appreciate it. We're always happy to have you here, even if it's virtual at this go round. And yes.
Next time it can be in person.
Yes, there we go. We'll go. Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, great. And I will send this PDF to you tomorrow, and you